Today I need to flush my water heater, and I thought I might as well make a video of how I do it. Now this is just how I drain and flush my water heater. Some people might do it a little differently, but for the most part it's going to be the same. So of course, first of all, you just need to hook up your garden hose to the drain valve, which is typically going to be, not typically, always going to be on the bottom of your water heater. You got the burner chamber right here, which is about this big, I don't know, 3-4 inches. And then on the bottom of the actual water storage tank, you're going to have a drain valve. Lots of times it'll be in the front. If it's not, just look around and you should find it, either the left or the right side, somewhere there. So you hook up your hose to the drain valve. And there's different kinds of drain valves. Some of them will be twist open. If they're plastic, it could just be a tube with like a plastic wheel that you spin to open it up. Others will have a little ball valve or a lever to open it. Maybe a spigot, just that round wheel spigot. Or like in my case, you just need a flathead screwdriver to open up the valve like this. But before you start draining the water heater and flushing it, there is a couple other things you have to do. First of all, if you have a gas water heater, turn down your temperature setting all the way up to pilot lighting or vacation setting if you have that. You can completely turn it off if you want by turning your knob off. Here's the pilot setting on mine, and if I twist it further, well, might as well. That'll turn it off all the way. The downside of turning it off instead of just leaving it on pilot or vacation setting or pilot lighting like on mine right here is that when you switch it to the off position, then you have to relight your water heater. But if you leave it in pilot, then you can just turn your water heater right back on and the burners will come on. That was a mouthful, so let me repeat it just one more time quickly. Basically, you're putting it to pilot lighting or vacation setting, and then you switch your gas knob to the pilot setting like this. And the reason for that is while you're draining the water heater from all the water, you do not want your burner to come on and heat an empty tank, because that can damage the thing. So if you have a gas water heater, this is what you would do. If you have an electrical water heater, then you would go to your breaker panel and find where your water heater circuit breaker is. Usually it'll be a 220 double pole breaker, and shut that off so the elements don't come on while you're draining the water heater. So you turn the thermostat or the gas valve to the pilot setting, and other than that, you also have to turn off your cold water supply on top of the water heater. So you'll have two pipes coming out from the top of your water heater. If you're not sure which one is your cold water and which one's your hot, you can just try grabbing them right on top. And of course, the one that's the hot side is going to be hot, whereas the cold side is going to be cold. If you just travel a little upwards, like right here, I can feel that it's nice and cold up on top, whereas this one is still hot up in here. And of course, if you have a water heater that's something like mine, I have these rings on top that kind of give it away. Red, of course, means hot, and blue means cold. And then to make it even easier, it's even inscribed on top of it too. It says hot on this side and cold on this side. Most water heaters will have that. And here's my anode rod right here. I need to replace that sometime soon too. So once you found your cold water supply, which in my case is this one, that one should have a water shutoff valve right above it. In my case, it's a ball valve that I just turn perpendicular to the pipe to make like an X or a plus sign, and that shuts the water off to the water heater. Sometimes it might be a little spigot wheel type valve too. And just a warning, if you get unlucky when you start messing with this, you might spring a little bit of a leak. So hopefully that won't happen to you, but just kind of a heads up. Alright, and now we are ready to drain and flush our water heater. I already have my hose hooked up. I just need to run it to my floor drain. If you can run your hose outside, that's even better. If you can't, that's fine. And just one more note about this. The water coming out of your water heater is probably going to be very hot. So make sure nobody's touching it, your dog's not trying to drink it, and stuff like that. In my case, the outside is pretty far, and it's really cold outside anyway. So I'm just going to route this to my floor drain, which is right under my laundry sink. Right here. So I'll just put that there. And I also have a bucket. When I'm gonna just start draining it, I want to put the hose in here and just see what kind of junk comes out of the water heater. There should be some buildup and sediment that comes out of there. And one last thing you do before you open up that drain valve and start draining the water heater is you want to open up the hot side of some kind of faucet. preferably on the same level as your water heater. Turn on the hot side. Just leave it fully open. And if you have nothing leaking by that water shutoff valve on top of that cold water supply, your water should completely stop or just be a very small drip or trickle. Anyways, you just open up the hot side and you leave it open. And then for now, I will just stick my hose into the bucket so we can see what comes out of here. And let's go open up that valve. And the reason I'm doing this is because water heaters really, according to the manufacturer, should be flushed every year or two. And I haven't flushed mine for 2 years now. Actually, I bought this house 2 years ago. The water heater's 2003, so that's about 16 years old now. I'm not sure if the previous owner ever flushed it. And you know what? Even if he didn't, a lot of times that'll be just fine. I've seen water heaters that are like 30 years old that have never been flushed. So, I mean, it's good maintenance, but not everybody does it. Really, it's up to you if you want to do it or not, but it's pretty simple to do. Okay, so I got my gas valve turned to the pilot setting. My shutoff on the water supply is off, and my hot water faucet is open. Now we are ready to just open up this valve. So I would just completely go counterclockwise until it stops to fully open this valve. So as you can see, there is some sediment on the bottom there. It's a lot less than I expected it would be. There you go, I'll stir it up. So it's a dust cloud. But that's pretty normal because most of that sediment is going to be at the bottom of the tank. Right now we're just draining it. The actual flushing part where we stir stuff up, that'll be a little bit later. So I don't think we need the bucket anymore. I'll just go ahead and put the hose right here. Let it drain. I'll dump this out. Even better, I'll just dump it in the sink. And this usually takes about 20 minutes to drain. And the reason we opened up our hot water faucet is so we don't have that upside down gallon effect, or the straw effect as some people like to call it. You know, when you dump a water of gallon upside down, the water just kind of chugs out of there slowly instead of pouring out. So if you don't open up a hot water faucet, you create a similar effect with your water heater, where it'll be just chugging out slower. I apologize for my nasty looking floor drain, but it is metal and it started rusting, as you can see. But this draining process will take probably around 20 minutes. So I'm gonna go ahead and just put this hose right here and let it drain, and we'll come back once it's done. And we're back. I was a little optimistic when I said 20 minutes. It's more like 30 or 40 minutes that it took for this whole thing to drain. And maybe like 3 or 5 minutes after it started draining, I also pulled this pressure relief valve to release the pressure as well and help it drain faster. So I had that open all the time too. So the water heater is completely drained now, and at this point, this is where the flushing part comes in. So if there's any kind of sediment buildup on the bottom of the tank, this should stir it up and get it out. So I open my cold water supply at this point. I leave the hot water faucet open, and I can leave my pressure relief valve open as well. And I just open up this cold water supply for maybe 20 seconds at a time. And then I'm also going to go ahead and put this hose back in the bucket. See what kind of stuff we can stir up and get to come out. As you can see, I had some scale or sediment that came out. And this might just be because I have the hose elevated. But surprisingly, it's actually not that much stuff coming out. I thought it would be a lot more. So the previous owner must have actually been flushing his water heater, so there's not that much stuff in there. So I opened the cold supply valve and I let it fill up for maybe 20 seconds just so the water comes rushing down and stir up some of that stuff in the bottom of the tank. I left it open for about 20 seconds. Then I closed that valve back up, wait for the water heater to drain out, opened it back up again for about 20 seconds, and I repeat that process maybe 4 or 5 times to make sure I stir up everything and get most of that stuff out of there. And on my third time flushing it, I noticed that there was no water coming out of the hose, even though the thing was filling for like 30 seconds already, which means that some kind of a big flake or a big piece of debris was plugging up the valve. So I took off the hose and just blew through it backwards, and a bunch of gunk came flying out. I had a little puddle here. I didn't film that, but I already mopped it up. But yeah, if you're not noticing any water coming out of your hose, that means something is plugging up that valve from the inside there. Okay, so I'm done flushing my water heater. At this point, you want to close your drain valve. You want to tighten it pretty snug, otherwise it might start leaking. And you can take that hose off. And I would watch it for a little bit to make sure it's not leaking. Once in a while, after you disturb this valve, it will start to leak and it won't stop. You can try tightening it a little harder. And most of the time that'll be enough to stop it. If it doesn't, then you pretty much have a leaking valve and your options are either replace the drain valve, or you could just go to a hardware store and buy yourself a little cap like this with a seal inside and just go ahead and cap this drain valve off. And that, of course, will stop the leak real quick. So we took off the hose. Next thing you want to do is turn your water supply back on. And just let your water heater completely fill. So you want to leave that hot water faucet open. I usually just leave it open the whole time, all the way up until it fills to the top. The pressure relief valve, you can leave open until you see some water coming out, or you can just leave it open for, I don't know, I don't want to put a time limit on, but you can kind of hear the water filling up. Usually city pressure is about 60 psi, so the water heater fills up pretty quickly. So I typically just leave the hot water faucet on and go ahead and close that pressure relief valve. And as you can hear it, my hot water faucet is starting to spew out a bunch of air. That's because as that water is filling up the tank, the air is getting purged out of this faucet. So you definitely want to leave a faucet open until your water heater fills up. Well, as you can see, my water started to pour. It only took it like 3 minutes to fill back up compared to like 35 minutes to drain. So it fills back up real quick. And you might see some air bubbles spurting out of there. That's normal. So you turned your water on, you closed your pressure relief valve, the tank completely filled up, and the last thing you do is either relight your water heater if you completely turned it off, or set it from pilot back to on, and set your temperature setting back up to where you had it, and you should be good to go. Well guys, and that is how I drain and flush my water heater. Hopefully you found this video useful. If you have some suggestions of how I can make this process go even smoother, please share with us in the comments below. I would much appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to mash that like button on the way out, and we'll see you next time.